우리 당과 국가 군대의 최고령도자.
North Korea says it has successfully test-fired a long-range intercontinental ballistic missile. Ordered and supervised by leader Kim Jong-un, state TV hailed the launch, claiming the country's rocket capability could now reach anywhere in the world. Pyongyang, which has repeatedly ignored warnings from the international community to halt its weapons program, has been working to develop a nuclear-tipped ICBM capable of hitting the United States. US officials said the intermediate-range rocket landed in the Sea of Japan.
US President Donald Trump responded to the launch on Twitter.
North Korea has just launched another missile. Does this guy have anything better to do with his life? It's hard to believe that South Korea and Japan will put up with this much longer. Perhaps China will put a heavy move on North Korea and end this nonsense once and for all.
From a tiny studio in suburban Tokyo, another message is being prepared for broadcast across the Sea of Japan. Murao Tatsuru has been doing this every day since 2005, reaching out to Japanese people living in North Korea. But recently, as tensions on the Korean peninsula have increased, his message has become an emergency broadcast. He updates people on North Korean missile launches and what to do in the event of a military strike by the United States or its allies.
We give the latest military information and we tell them firmly to ensure their safety first. Unless they are alive, we can't help them get back to Japan.
The radio station's main aim is to help find people who were abducted by the regime in Pyongyang to teach spies Japanese language and culture.
China's envoy to the United Nations is warning that ongoing tensions with North Korea could, quote, get out of control if world powers do not find a way to cool the situation. Making the remarks on Monday, so prior to today's North Korean missile launch, Ambassador Liu Jie added, quote, disastrous consequences would be in store unless dialogue was reopened.
Xi Jinping's meeting with Vladimir Putin will mark their third face-to-face this year and comes just ahead of this week's G20 summit in Germany, where they will meet again. They had an informal dinner on Monday, and official talks will begin on Tuesday, during which they are likely to jointly voice their opposition to the THAAD battery. Beijing and Moscow say it undermines their security interests and does nothing to stop North Korea's nuclear and missile programs, an issue that will also likely be discussed during their summit. In a testament to the pair's close relationship, Putin is scheduled to award President Xi with the Order of St. Andrew for what the Kremlin called his distinguished service to the Chinese and Russian public. The two leaders are also expected to sign dozens of bilateral agreements, including trade deals to the tune of nearly $10 billion. Their ties seem to be stronger than ever as their respective relations with the US have soured recently after Washington listed China as one of the worst human trafficking offenders and also expanded sanctions on Russia for its aggression against Ukraine.
China's President Xi Jinping gave President Trump an earful last night when they spoke by phone. The two men will meet in person this week at the G20 conference in Germany. Ben Tracy reports Xi was upset that a U.S. destroyer sailed close to a disputed island claimed by China.
The Chinese government says the USS Stetham, a Navy warship, was trespassing in its waters when it passed just 12 miles off the coast of a small island in the South China Sea Sunday. The United States disputes China's claims to the area and accuses the Chinese government of building a military airstrip on one of its man-made islands. China's foreign ministry accused the U.S. of what it called a serious political and military provocation. This is the second pass of a U.S. Navy ship off the islands since President Trump took office. It comes just days after the U.S. announced it is selling $1.4 billion worth of weapons to Taiwan, which has also angered the Chinese government. The relationship that President Trump and Chinese President Xi appeared to form this spring at their meeting in Florida now seems strained at best.
It looks like President Donald Trump will use fast-growing supplies of U.S. natural gas as a political tool when he meets in Warsaw this week with leaders of a dozen countries that are captive to Russia for their energy needs. Reuters reports that Trump will tell the group that Washington wants to help allies by making it as easy as possible for U.S. companies to ship more liquefied natural gas, or LNG, to Central and Eastern Europe. Trump will attend the Three Seas Summit, so named because several of its members surround the Adriatic, Baltic, and Black Seas before the group of 20 leading economies meet in Germany. Among the aims of the Three Seas project is to expand regional energy infrastructure, including LNG import terminals and gas pipelines.
Iranians have organized a Trumpism cartoon contest in which hundreds of participants were invited to submit artwork mocking the U.S. leader. The same organizers held a Holocaust cartoon contest last year, which they said was meant to highlight Western double standards on free speech and not to cast doubt on the Nazi genocide. The logo for the contest is based on the Nazi emblem, with a diagonal T in a white circle against a red background. One cartoon shows President Donald Trump painting a Hitler-like mustache on the face of the Statue of Liberty. Hadi Assadi of Iran, who won first prize and a $1,500 award, said he wanted to highlight the money-mindedness and warmonger nature of Trump. His cartoon shows Trump wearing a jacket made of dollar notes while drooling on books, a reference to cultural material.
The head of the IDF military intelligence is confirming reports that Iran has set up a weapons factory in Lebanon, and this puts Israel in a real dilemma. Over the last few days, Arab newspapers have been publishing reports about an Iranian weapons manufacturing plant in Lebanon. Well, Major General Herzl Halevi has just confirmed that it exists, and that's a problem. Israeli airstrikes on Iranian weapons convoys from Syria to Lebanon, as well as sea shipments, have been effective, but maybe too effective. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard has decided it's more efficient to just build weapons in Lebanon. The question now is if Israel will attack the weapons factory and risk a full-blown war with Hezbollah. Reportedly, they're hoping to solve the issue diplomatically, but considering that Hezbollah is in effective control of the Lebanese government, Lebanon is unlikely to budge. Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman says that Israel doesn't intend to go to war with Lebanon, but this weapons factory might change their calculations. All right, Israelis are being treated to a larger-than-life sight this week now that the world's largest warship is docking in Haifa. The massive vessel is called the USS George H.W. Bush, and it's here in Israel for the first time in 17 years.
Given its name, it's probably no surprise that the ship came all the way from its home port in the United States. The Nimitz-class aircraft left Norfolk, Virginia on January 21st and has been in the region since February. It's supposed to serve as a base for airstrikes against the Islamic State group, and it operates mainly in the Persian Gulf. Now, to put the size of the massive ship in perspective, it's 333 meters long and can carry a crew of over 5,000 people. Plus, it can fit around 90 fighter jets and helicopters, in addition, if I may add. Because the nuclear-powered warship is so big, it actually wasn't able to enter the Haifa post itself and had to drop and anchor 4 kilometers from the harbor. As of now, Israel and American officials have not provided any details about the nature of this visit, but U.S. and Israeli navies often cooperate closely. Over the course of the next 4 days, the George H.W. Bush will tour Israel to celebrate the upcoming American Independence Day in the Holy Land.
The Israeli Minister of Military Affairs has defended the regime's recent attacks on its Syrian army positions in the Golan Heights. Avigdor Lieberman said the Israeli army will continue its attacks more forcefully in the future. He's referring to Tel Aviv's air raids in Kinitra countryside over the past 2 weeks. Israel's Air Force has been targeting the area several times in response to what it calls stray fire from Syrian Golan Heights.
Images filmed on board a Turkish freighter showing a Greek Coast Guard vessel that reportedly opened fire in the Aegean Sea after the captain refused to dock at a Greek island. The captain says his vessel suffered 16 bullet holes after he refused to dock at the island of Rhodes for inspection. Greek authorities say warning shots were fired but maintain no bullets reached the freighter. They say they had intelligence that required the ship to be searched. The captain of the freighter did not say why he didn't want his vessel inspected. The ship carried on towards Turkish waters.
All right, Sunday, President Trump retweeted a video of him wrestling Vince McMahon, Vince's head being replaced by the CNN logo. Bet you haven't seen it yet. It was silly, harmless nonsense, yet people lost their minds. Sorry, did I say people? I meant humorless libs who ignore real incitement but take issue with this. Oh, I'm getting the vapors. CNN actually issued a statement about this video saying it incites violence, as if it were a Shakespearean adaptation where the president's being murdered. Fareed Zakaria of CNN called that a masterpiece.
Welcome back to the special edition of Hannity, President Trump versus the resistance. Well, Democratic obstructionists are working on a new plan to try to impeach President Trump after the Russia collusion narrative has completely fallen apart. Well, a bill appears to be gaining support from Democrats in the House. Over 20 liberal lawmakers are now backing a plan that would create an oversight commission to deem if the president is mentally or physically unfit to serve, which could then lead to his removal under the 25th Amendment.
Are we getting closer and closer to the possibility of yet another impeachment process?
After watching the Clinton impeachment, I thought I'd never see another one.
We are well on our way to impeachment, because I think there's a clear set of facts that show obstruction of justice.
This is heading toward the end, right? It has to be, right? It feels that way.
Developing tonight, it appears President Obama isn't going to go away quietly. Just days after President Trump met with South Korean President Moon Jae-in to talk North Korea strategy, Obama took a trip to South Korea to do the exact same thing. And this isn't the first time he's taken to the international stage to undermine the current administration. Listen.
I hope that current members of Congress recall that it actually doesn't take a lot of courage to aid those who are already powerful, already comfortable, already influential.
Because of the current debates that are taking place in Washington, it may be that some of the steps we put in place move more slowly than they otherwise would have. In this new world that we live in, we can't isolate ourselves. We can't hide behind a wall.
After losing the White House and a series of special elections since, Democrats are trying to plot a new path forward. Now there's a report out that says President Obama is taking on a larger role in his party's strategy, mostly behind the scenes. There's a piece in The Hill that says, quotes the former president as saying, while he plans to provide space for new leadership in the party to step in, he also wants to be an available resource for those drafting the Democratic message.
According to French authorities, a man has been charged with plotting to kill French President Emmanuel Macron during a visit by Donald Trump to France for Bastille Day on July 14th. The suspect, who has been hit with preliminary terrorism charges, has reportedly expressed far-right nationalist opinions online and was caught after saying he'd been looking up potential targets on the internet. After being caught, French police reportedly found 3 kitchen knives in his vehicle. As of now, it's unclear whether Trump's presence at the event was a factor in the alleged plot.
The French President Emmanuel Macron wants to slash the size of France's parliament by a third. He announced the plan during an address to the Senate and National Assembly in Versailles.
I'm convinced that this measure will have a positive impact on the general quality of parliamentary work.
Reducing the size of the parliament wasn't the only proposal Macron made. The issue of terrorism was also touched upon. He suggested lifting the state of emergency by the autumn and bringing in tougher anti-terror measures.
You can see how these MPs of the Macron had been elected without having made any politics in their lives, because it's a very new party which has been elected with the help of the big medias in France. You know that in France 9 billionaires hold the media. So these MPs are only employees of Mr. Macron, who is also an employee of this of the media tycoons.
8 people have been wounded in a shooting near this mosque in the southern French city of Avignon. Police say they suspect the incident to be a dispute between youths. 2 of the 8 wounded were taken to hospital, according to a local resident. The witness said a car had pulled up with 4 people inside. The 2 in the back got out and started shooting a targeted group. A local newspaper cited witnesses saying one of the 2 gunmen had their face covered. Worshippers leaving the mosque had not been the intended target.
One of the biggest music festivals in Sweden will not take place next year after reports of rape and sexual assault plagued this year's event. Reports vary on how many alleged attacks took place at the Bravalla Festival in Norrköping. The AFP news agency said police received 4 rape allegations and 23 sexual assault allegations between Thursday, June 29th and Sunday, July 2nd. According to the Associated Press, Swedish authorities reported 1 case of rape. The organizer of the festival announced Saturday that it would pull the plug on Bravalla 2018 due to the alleged attacks. Reports of sexual violence are not new to Bravalla. Several cases were reported there last year, as well as at other music festivals in the country. Swedish Prime Minister Stefan Löfven called on the country to improve security efforts in light of these most recent alleged attacks.
Now we're unveiling to serve everybody. Come taste my plum cake and drink my smoothie. People are talking bad about me.
The refugees that are coming to Europe, they are like zombies when they come here. That they're not to blame for that, but I think when they come here, they don't have opportunities that they should get. So they're like living dead here.
Just behind me is where the famous Sicilian market Ballaro takes place here in Palermo every day. And while in the day it's a hotspot for tourists, in fact they're recommended to go and see the market as one of the things to do here when you're on the island of Sicily. But at night the market turns into something completely different, and instead of selling fresh produce and fish, what's being sold on the streets here is hard drugs. And the majority of the people selling those drugs are migrants from Africa.
That's what we've been told by one local journalist, Francesco Bellina. We film in secret with him on the streets.
Mafia bosses needed to use somebody for sell drugs. So in this case, in this period, they are using also migrants, specifically Nigerian migrants, because there is a relationship between mafia and this gang called Black Axe.
Sicily has a long history of crime, mainly perpetrated by the mafia. What's happening now is that it's teaming up with migrants to carry out criminal activities. Selling drugs is not the only way many migrants are forced to make money.
We've been told that many young people are being used for trafficking and for prostitution here on the island of Sicily. And we're told that if we just head down this main street here, literally just off this main street, is where many of the girls, particularly from Nigerian origin, are selling their bodies night after night.
Thieves have stolen more than 1,000 rounds of ammunition and hundreds of explosives from military warehouses in Portugal. Authorities discovered June 28th that the thieves made off with a massive weapons haul after cutting a hole in a fence at the military complex in Tancos, northeast of Lisbon. Spanish news outlet El Español said the thieves took more than 1,400 rounds of ammunition, more than 250 units of plastic explosives, and hundreds of hand, anti-tank, and tear gas grenades. Portugal's defense minister, José Azevedo Lopes, said he notified NATO and EU partners of the theft. According to The Guardian, Lopez added, quote, "There's no doubt that this material is now on its way into the illegal arms market." The surveillance cameras at the complex have reportedly been broken for 2 years.
According to the BBC, 5 military commanders were suspended while the incident is being investigated.
Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte says that after militants in Marawi are defeated, he will go after their arms supplier. While speaking to police officers on Thursday, June 28, Duterte said, quote, "It would be good after this war to start looking into where the firearms and ammunition came from." The military has expressed surprise that the militants do not seem to be running out of ammunition in the fight for Marawi, which has dragged on for over a month. The government has previously said they suspect the militants acquired weapons through the MILF and MNLF rebel groups operating in Mindanao. However, some high-powered weapons and ammunition have been traced back to the Department of National Defense, prompting Duterte to order an investigation into how they ended up in militants' hands.
China's sweeping internet crackdown has a new target in its sights, and it's making the likes of filmmakers and bloggers nervous. An industry association circulating new guidelines warning auditors are poring over everything from movies to documentaries and even sports material, making sure it all sticks to what it calls core socialist values. Any mention of drug addiction, homosexuality, or even obvious displays of affection likely to draw the ire of Beijing. These tighter rules will impact sites great and small, from social media giant Weibo to niche buzzing online communities. Censorship in China is nothing new, and under President Xi, it's even easier to offend. Gossip websites have recently been taken down and online streaming suspended, all on the grounds of inappropriate content. Many in the art scene feel it could spell the end of creativity, but are quick to point out these new rules might be impossible to enforce.
According to court documents, Facebook Incorporated is challenging a gag order from a U.S. court that is preventing the company from talking about 3 government search warrants that it said pose a threat to freedom of speech. According to a filing in a Washington, D.C. appeals court seen by Reuters, Facebook said it wants to notify 3 users about the search warrants seeking their communications and information. The company also wants to give those users an opportunity to object to the warrants. Facebook said in a statement on Monday, "We believe there are important First Amendment concerns with this case."
Volunteers in India just planted over 66 million trees and might have broken the world record, which the country previously set. Last year, people in India planted 50 million trees in a single day, the most ever in 24 hours. Beyond snagging a record, it's a hands-on effort to help the environment. Reforestation is part of India's commitment to the Paris climate deal. The country pledged to boost forest coverage to 235 million acres by 2030. There's no official total yet for the cost of this latest project, but India said it would spend around $6 billion on reforestation. And while all the little seedlings have a new home, now the hurdle is helping them survive. Guinness World Records notes in mass plantings about 40% of trees end up dying.
Andrew Snelling disagrees with most other geologists on the origin of the Grand Canyon.
It's a testimony not to billions of years, but to the biblical account of Earth history.
But now he'll get the chance to back up his claims with evidence. For a few years, Snelling has been trying to get permission to collect rocks in the park. But the park denied him a permit, and Snelling says it's because of his religious beliefs. So back in May, Snelling sued the federal government. The National Park Service has confirmed it issued a permit for Snelling's trip, and the lawsuit was dropped. In a press release, Snelling's lawyer thanked National Park Service officials, Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, and the Trump administration for no longer blocking access to data based on a researcher's religious faith.
Пошли. Ну пойдем, пойдем.